term race car for the road gets thrown around quite a bit, but when it comes to the Porsche Carrera GT, it's true. Originally planned as a successor to the Porsche GT1, the Carrera GT is built around a carbon fiber monocoque chassis, and mounted low in center of that chassis is a 10-cylinder engine that was designed to power F1 cars. The Carrera GT's incredible lines, exotic racing heritage, mid-mounted V10 engine, and extreme exclusivity make it one of the most desirable cars Porsche has ever made. And because of its lack of electronic driver aids, it's earned the nickname of the last analog supercar, but it also goes by another name, the most dangerous car ever made. Only 1,270 Carrera GTs were produced, yet it's been involved in a huge number of accidents, including 4 high-profile incidents, 2 of which claimed the lives of 4 people. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the characteristics of the Carrera GT that make it a challenging car to drive. We'll also be looking at Porsche's controversial internal communications regarding it, and we'll be doing a detailed analysis of the 4 high-profile crashes to determine whether they were caused by design flaws, careless driving, or other circumstances. When the Carrera GT gets reported as the deadliest vehicle ever made, the reasons usually cited are: it's too powerful, the engine is too big, the engine is mounted in an unsafe location, and the lack of electronic stability control. There's also another factor that might be a major contributor to the Carrera GT's numerous accidents that has never been publicly mentioned. So we'll take a look at all of these factors and see just how much they contribute to the Carrera GT's high accident rate. The Carrera GT has 603 horsepower, which sounds pretty extreme, but to put that in perspective, today there are numerous manufacturers producing cars with over 1,000 horsepower, including Dodge, GMC, Mercedes, and Tesla. So all things considered, there's a lot of vehicles on the road that are significantly more powerful than the Carrera GT that are not considered dangerous. The Carrera GT has a 5.7-liter 10-cylinder engine. And yes, that is a large engine, but there are also companies like Dodge who sell hundreds of thousands of cars each year that have a 6.2-liter engine, and none of those cars are considered to be unsafe. The Carrera GT is mid-engined, which means the engine is mounted between the front seats and the rear axle, which people claim makes the car dangerous. But having the heaviest component of the car mounted in the middle actually makes it more stable when going around turns, so if anything, it makes the car safer. During this video, and whenever people are discussing the Carrera GT crashes, you will frequently hear the term electronic stability control. This refers to a number of mechanisms that can help to reduce the amount a vehicle skids when being driven at street legal speeds. This means that electronic stability control was designed to work during normal street driving and is not some kind of force field that allows people to drive in an unsafe and irresponsible manner without crashing. And back in 2005, when the Carrera GT was on sale, electronic stability control was still in its infancy. The Carrera GT was built for an extremely niche group of people known as automotive purists. These are people who want lightweight and powerful cars that require skill, not computer programming, to be driven quickly. So when Porsche designed the Carrera GT, they opted to minimize the electronic stability control on feedback from their clientele. The Carrera GT did receive a handful of safety features such as anti-lock brakes, front impact airbags, side impact airbags, seatbelt pretensioners, and a very basic version of electronic traction control. But if Porsche did include more safety features, low-speed crashes in the Carrera GT would definitely be more preventable. But there's one more factor that might be responsible for the Carrera GT's high accident rate, and that is the psychological factor. There are cars that ask to be driven slowly and safely, and then there are cars that demand to be driven aggressively. And this is definitely one of those cars. And with its assertive presence and reputation for power and speed, I don't think anyone wants to be seen driving a Carrera GT slowly. So when considering all of these factors, it seems that as long as the Carrera GT is being driven within the legal parameters of the road, it's a perfectly safe vehicle. But when we look at Porsche's internal communications regarding the car, they seem to tell a different story. Now, Porsche has had a lot of things to say about the Carrera GT, and some of them seem to be pretty damning. In 2004, Porsche issued a memo to their dealerships suggesting that they warn potential customers about the car's powerful engine and sensitivity to road conditions. The memo stated, "I think it is very important that the man who has gone to technical training at least is consulted before anyone drives this vehicle. The Carrera GT is as close to a race car as we will ever get. This car has all the disadvantages of a race car." World Rally champion and Porsche test driver Walter Rudl said the Carrera GT was the first car in my life that I drive and feel scared. After testing the Carrera GT on a wet racetrack, he said, "I came back into the pits and I was white. I immediately said to the engineers that we need one button for the wet and one button for the dry." It is believed that Porsche was aware of the Carrera GT's tendency to oversteer during high lateral acceleration, and that Porsche made adjustments but didn't fix the problem entirely. So it does seem like Porsche was aware of just how hard it is to drive the Carrera GT at high speeds. Now let's look at the car's accident history. The first major accident involving the Carrera GT happened at the California Speedway in Fontana on June 2nd, 2005, just after the Carrera GT went on sale.
2 people killed when a high-performance sports car crashes at the California Speedway in Fontana. The track is home to NASCAR's California 500 event and others, as you know. But today, there was only one car on the track at the time of the crash. Channel 4's Mary Parks is live at the racetrack now. Mary, wasn't this a Ferrari event today?
Well, we've learned, Paul, that this was a private group that was here. Routinely, private groups rent the track just to practice and run some laps. And right now, the Speedway officials and the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department are trying to determine exactly what happened here this morning. We have learned since this morning that this was a track rental situation. The Ferrari Owners Club of Southern California had rented part of the speedway to do some laps and simply race around. Then around 11 o'clock this morning, a driver and a passenger in this Porsche Carrera GT simply lost control and hit a wall on the straightaway. Investigators speculated it could have been a blowout, but the MATE team, the Major Accident Investigation Team, is here trying to determine exactly what happened and caused this crash. One person died at the scene. A second individual was airlifted to a local hospital, but later died.
At approximately 10:40 a.m., driver Ben Keaton, who was 39, and passenger Corey Rudl, who was 34, were traveling down the racetrack straightaway at 130 miles an hour when a Ferrari traveling at a low speed pulled out directly in front of them. Ben Keaton swerved to avoid hitting the Ferrari, and the Carrera GT skidded off the course and slammed into a concrete barrier wall. Corey Rudl died instantly, and Ben Keaton was airlifted to a hospital but died shortly after. At the time of this accident, the racetrack was plagued by several design flaws, the worst of which had the vehicles leaving the pit area at a slow speed and entering onto the racetrack in the middle of the straightaway where the cars were traveling at their fastest. To make things even more dangerous, the cars entering the track were unable to see oncoming traffic due to their view being obstructed by a concrete barrier, and they had to rely on someone to tell them when to enter the straightaway. At the time of the accident, the person who directed the Ferrari onto the track did not see the approaching Carrera GT. But if that wasn't bad enough, on the day of the accident, the concrete barriers on the outside of the straightaway had been moved closer to the track to create a larger children's play area for an earlier NASCAR event. It was determined that the unfortunate crash that killed Ben Keaton and Corey Rudl was caused by numerous factors, including an incredibly unsafe track layout, the race organizers failing to enforce the track safety rules about cars entering the straightaway, and the driver of the Ferrari entering the track too slowly. People are making the argument that if the car had better electronic stability control, the crash could have been avoided, but back in 2005, when this car was sold, there was no level of traction control that could have prevented this crash. And I'm pretty sure that even today, there is no traction control system that would allow a person to be traveling at 130 miles an hour and turn the steering wheel sharply without losing control of the car. Just 4 months after the Fontana incident, on September 1st, 2005, Leno was participating in a publicity stunt where he and David Donahue, son of legendary race car driver Mark Donahue, were attempting to break several records that were set at the same racetrack 30 years earlier by Mark Donahue, who was driving a Porsche 91730 Can-Am race car. At the time, Leno owned a Carrera GT but had never driven it on a racetrack. He had a love-hate relationship with the car and talked about its tendency to jump across lanes on the highway and described it as a handful to drive. Before the event began, Leno was instructed not to lift off the accelerator at high speeds when entering a turn because that could cause the car to lose control. But during an attempt to break the top speed record, he was traveling at 182 miles per hour and lifted off the accelerator while entering into a turn. The car went into an uncontrolled spin and completed 5 full rotations. I was able to dig up an old video about the event.
Today, we've learned one thing from a pro.
It's not as easy as it looks.
And Jay's learning that very thing as he gets track and driving lessons from David.
At these speeds, a fraction of a second it takes to recover from a mistake covers so much distance that you end up in a wall. So you can't afford to really have any mistakes. You really have to be intuitive what the car's about to do instead of reacting to what it's already doing, because there's just no room.
Well, aside from setting a record, Jay's goal is simple.
I just want to be right below crashing.
When you know you're right below crashing?
Right before I crash.
This run is one of Jay's best. but as he picks up speed into turn 3, disaster. Hitting about 190, Jay's car spins 5 full rotations. As David races to see if Leno hit the wall, Jay heads back to the pits.
We just saw the beginning of the spin, and then you disappeared from our sight. We were waiting for that thud.
Oh, I just cooked a little too much. I got a little sideways, and then started spinning. And I hit the brakes. I just saw the wall coming. I got off the brakes. And then I assumed there wasn't any wall. I got on the brakes again. Then when I saw more wall, I got off the brakes. And it was kind of like driving on ice there a little bit. But it was all right. Looked exciting.
Luckily, the car veered into the center of the ovular track, and only minor damage was done. And other than being a bit shaken, Jay Leno was fine. Jay Leno was warned about lifting off the accelerator, but when you're driving that fast, the brain is constantly screaming at you to take your foot off the gas, so I can't blame Leno for doing so. And simply taking your foot off the gas should not cause a car to lose control. In this particular case, I feel that the Carrera GT was to blame for the accident. There's a lot of incorrect information out there regarding this extremely tragic event, but everything I'm reporting is fact. Paul Walker and Roger Rodas first met at a racing event when Paul noticed Roger was driving a Porsche GT3 that he used to own. The two quickly became close friends, racing partners, and business partners. On Saturday afternoon, November 30th, 2013, Paul Walker and Roger Rodas left a fundraiser event in a Carrera GT that was owned and being driven by Roger Rodas. They drove to a nearby industrial park in Valencia, California, that was a known location for reckless driving. Just after 3:30 p.m., the two men were traveling north on Kelly Johnson Parkway at a speed first estimated by police to be between 80 and 95 miles per hour, but was later confirmed by the coroner to be at least 100 miles per hour, which was well over twice the posted speed limit. While going around a turn, Roger lost control of the Carrera GT, and the vehicle went over a curb and clipped a light post, which sent the car spinning into a tree, where it was smashed into numerous pieces and caught fire. According to the coroner's report, Roger Rodas was killed instantly, while Paul Walker remained alive, but was either unconscious or unable to exit the vehicle due to numerous broken bones, and he was eventually killed by the fire. No signs of drugs or alcohol were detected in the blood of either man. Paul Walker's daughter, Meadow, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche, stating that design flaws in the car and lack of electronic stability control made it unsafe to drive, and Porsche responded with the following statement: "We are saddened whenever anyone is hurt in a Porsche vehicle, but we believe the authorities' reports in this case clearly established that the tragic crash resulted from reckless driving and excessive speed." During the legal process, Jay Leno provided testimony in support of Porsche, stating that in his opinion, the car was not the cause of the accident. After numerous in-depth investigations, the accident was determined to be the result of unsafe speed and the expired tires on the Carrera GT, which were not able to provide a safe amount of grip and should have been replaced years before this tragic accident. A judge dismissed all claims against Porsche in 2016.
Yo, this dude is drunk.
The fuck out. He's just driving with a fucked up car right now.
Yo, my nigga's bugging.
Watch him, he gonna run.
On April 7th of 2020, Chen decided to take advantage of the pandemic lockdown and go on an allegedly drug-fueled high-speed run through the empty streets of New York City in his modified Carrera GT. His wrecking spree destroyed at least 5 vehicles and caused millions of dollars in damage. He was charged with operating a motor vehicle impaired by drugs and reckless driving, and he must have had the greatest lawyer in the world, because despite all of this being caught on video by a number of people, all charges against him were dropped. Chen has a history of destroying expensive cars, including a Lamborghini Murcielago and a McLaren 12C Spider. When we look at the factors of this incident, someone who is allegedly driving while intoxicated and traveling significantly faster than the speed limit, this crash was without a doubt the fault of the driver. So is the Carrera GT a deadly vehicle? With all the factors we've considered, I think we can determine that when being driven at legal speeds, the Carrera GT is a perfectly safe car, but when being driven at extremely high speeds, it seems to be less stable than other vehicles that are traveling at those same speeds, which raises a bit of a conundrum, because you can make the argument that the Carrera GT wasn't made to be driven within the confinements of speed limits. It was made to be driven at 200 miles per hour, which, from what we've seen here today, it probably shouldn't. But I think the ultimate argument here is that if a person is breaking the law and using an object in an unsafe and irresponsible manner, they alone are responsible for the results of their actions, and not the company that manufactured the object. So I guess the final lesson here is, if you ever decide to buy a Carrera GT, be sure to drive it safely. But if you truly want to keep yourself safe, the best thing you can do is click here to subscribe to this channel for more original content that you cannot find anywhere else.
Hey,
thought you could leave without saying goodbye.